and welcome to the Red Barrels Podcast, episode 33. Just like Expedition 33 in Clobbers, Claire Obscure, we finally did it. We got there. We got to the 33rd one. Just like that. That means everyone listening to this who is the age of 33 and above is going to die. They're going to be dissolved in the gommage. Bad news. This is how you're finding out about it. Sorry.
Welcome to the podcast. This is your first time
wasn't my
listening.
choice.
It is a threat.
On the other hand, 33 is the age at which our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ died, which we are recording.
We're taking a
That's
pivot.
a much
listener.
cooler club than the 27 Club, let me tell you.
Exactly.
It's
We're
the Jesus
recording
Christ
on
Club.
Maundy Thursday,
Mhm.
which means
That's true.
tomorrow is the alleged anniversary of that event. And then you know what
Wow.
happened? He only went and came back.
Wow.
So don't worry, guys. You'll be fine. You
You'll
may
be
die in the
fine.
gommage, but you'll be back
Mhm.
a few days later.
I also think
Much
that we
like
should...
Jesus
we
and
should
everyone
stop
in
defining-
Jerusalem, apparently, in some Gospels.
Yes, I think we should also stop defining Clobbers as Claire Obscure. I think if people haven't cottoned on at this point, then they should stay out of the culture, quite frankly.
Wow.
I'm joking.
There's some big claims here.
It's
Well,
no,
Clobbers
that's fair.
or it's nothing.
Yeah,
Well,
there should
you
be
heard-
some rhyme there, shouldn't there?
Yes,
Wow, so
Clobbers,
Clobbers
or
or bug off.
I think I was being
Or is
accused of.
bonkers.
I think I was accused of being threatening, and then suddenly out this comes. You know,
Clobbers or goners.
Clobbers or
It's
goners.
a war of
good point.
escalation.
Clobbers or
Yeah.
goners.
Clobbers or goners.
Uh,
Clobbers or shut your gobbers.
Welcome
Well, I
to the
was just
podcast. Who the
thinking.
fuck are we?
I was thinking, maybe our listeners are a fan of Mario. He's a working class man. He's a plumber, but maybe there's another working class man, another laborer, a carpenter, perhaps, that you might also think is a
Uh-huh.
cool guy. Just a hero who saves not just the princess, but all of our souls. Yeah, just think about that. Eh?
Who is it?
I'll leave it up to our audience.
Who's
to
Have
talking
you
about
heard the good word, listener? Have you heard it?
This is it. Your gaming socialist Christian podcast.
We're here to have
yeah.
good Christian fun, okay?
Anyway.
Good, clean Christian fun.
Let's just swerve away
Yeah.
from this crazy pivot and make it absolutely clear that we aren't actually going to be doing that from now on to our listeners. But we are going to be talking about games. It's the games one. We did the news one last week. Next week, we'll do the news one again. 'Cause this week is the games one. The one that goes in between the news ones. That's right. We've got two juicy games to talk about today. Very juicy. They're so juicy. And let's get straight into it because I don't want to deny you the juice. Let's go. It's the man with the
It's
juice.
the juice
It's
to me.
Ed.
Stop!
I don't like this.
I don't like it at all.
The
can juice
juiciest
yourself,
co-host.
Ed.
The juiciest co-host. It's
Juice
Ed.
E, they call me.
Juicy,
Um,
exactly.
Well,
I hate it.
against my
Thanks.
better judgment, it's me first. I have been playing Dark Souls 2.
Two?
Two?
Ooh.
You played the first
That's
one and now
right.
you're playing the second one?
That's so unlike you,
better
Ed,
believe
to
it.
play them
My
in
God.
order. Religiously.
What can I say? Well, not religiously, but
Yeah,
we'll
true,
get there
not
in a second.
religiously. We're
Dark
not
Souls
going back to
2 is a 2014 action RPG from Software, and it's considered the third Soulsborne game after Demon Souls and Dark Souls. Specifically, I played the 2015 version called Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin, which contains updated enemy placements and all the DLC that they produced for the game. And this is the first Soulsborne game not to be helmed by Hidetaka Miyazaki.
Hidetaki
So,
Miyazaki.
Yeah, I feel like... Sorry, yes. Yeah, exactly. I feel that I should give a bit of my background with the series, the game a little bit before we go on, because it's a little bit relevant to my experience. This is my fourth time playing a Soulsborne game. I originally played Bloodborne in around 2017, so there we go, not religiously doing things in order.
All right, well
I'm
done,
a rebel.
well done. Oh, the bad
Thank
boy's
you.
back.
And
Bad
then I
boy's
played...
back.
Hell yeah, we ride. Then I played Demon Souls for episode 8 of this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And I played Dark Souls for episode 17 of this podcast. And I went into Dark Souls 2 knowing quite a bit about it, to be honest. I'm a big H-Bomber guy, fan. I love his videos. And I've seen his Defense of Dark Souls 2 video many times. I've also watched the video that he was responding to because, I'm very fair-minded. So I've seen Matthew Matosis's video. And I've also seen some of Mauler's horrifically long 10-hour response to H-Bomber Guy. So that's quite a lot of H-Bomber Guy-based Dark Souls 2 content. I'm also a fan of Joseph Anderson and Noah Caldwell-Gervais, and they've both done videos on Dark Souls 2. In fact, I think Joseph Anderson's done 3 of them. I've seen all of these videos, and I'd seen them all going in. So all of this is important because more than most, I think,
more like
your enjoyment...
Ed, more like scholar of the second game. Am I right?
I said that name like 10 minutes ago. How does it take me that
long
long time to cook
It's the
that
name
up?
of the game. It's the name of the edition of the game. That's like
Come
scholar
on,
the first
man.
scene, scholar the all right.
You didn't need to explain it. We knew what you were doing. We just were unimpressed.
You're doing
Okay.
just...
Unbelievable.
Anyway, thank you,
Impressed by the
thank you,
confidence.
Alex. Yeah, more than most games, I think Dark Souls 2, your experience of it is dependent a little bit on how much you know going in. So with that context in mind, I want to say I found this game by far the easiest Soulsborne game that I have played, with the context of 3 previous games under my belt and a lot of outside knowledge of how to play the game in a fun way. That obviously has a big part to play in why that's the case. But still, there's a lot that's been said about it, but I want to share my perspective. I feel like I'm having a little bit of conversation with all those videos that I've just mentioned. So hopefully this still works. Presumably you've not seen the 10-hour Mauler thing, etc. Dear listener,
I'm a
I wouldn't recommend it.
little disappointed with
hopefully
you,
it works
listener.
without that.
I'm a little bit disappointed with you, listener, if you haven't seen that. But I mean, we'll get by. But I am a bit disappointed.
I wouldn't do that if I were you. So yeah, the game. At its very core, the game is quite similar to Demon's Souls and Dark Souls. So and given I've covered those games already, a lot of my discussion here is going to be about the differences between this game and the previous 2. Specifically, I want to talk about the adaptability attributes, I want to talk about the health system, I want to talk about the way the worlds are built, and I want to talk about changes to the enemies and the bosses. But first, I'll just cover the similarities really quickly. So it's a difficult game for much the same reason as Dark Souls and Demon's Souls are difficult games. I've covered this at length before. To summarize, what I see is the appeal of the game. You need to take the world very seriously and act deliberately to get through the game. Enemies do large amounts of damage, so you need to be very careful to avoid or block attacks throughout. Your stamina is pretty limited, so that makes blindly spamming enemies basically impossible. And this is all very engaging. You've got to be very locked in, and you've got to gradually learn the rhythms of the various enemies you encounter. And ultimately, as you get better, you almost end up in like a complex dance. And it feels quite a bit like solving a puzzle, making your way through a boss fight or a level. You've got to sort of correctly moved and dodged and hit at the right times, in the right rhythm, in the right way. And that all contributes to making this series quite addictive, I would say. And beyond the core appeal, there are lots of other similarities. The stories of all these games have a sort of deliberate obscurity to them, I would say. I think all of them, the stories are designed to create a sort of mysterious and melancholy tone. They also kind of have a Lovecraftian vibe to them, of there being these ancient powers who care nothing of humanity that are at work in the world. And there tends to be the kind of Ozymandias theme of societies rising, falling, and being forgotten. In this game, for instance, when we finally meet the Great King, he's a stumbling wreck, sort of shambling about, and you don't even need to fight him. We meet characters at other points in this game who are from times that have been basically completely forgotten by everyone other than this character. They're from a completely different era of the world that's been completely forgotten. So yeah, and the game presents this in sort of a depressing light, as I say, very melancholy, focusing on the feeling that the sands of time come for us all, and you too will be forgotten. But of course, you can see like an equalizing aspect to this as well. Even though the most mighty king will one day be just as dead as you or I will be. And as the sands constantly change beneath our feet, who's to say what the limit of the kind of world we could build is? That's my positive takeaway from the stories of this game. I don't think that's what it's meant to be saying, but that's what I take from it, to combat the darkness of the game. When nothing is solid, then everything is to play for. So that's my take from the themes of the story.
Ooh.
But anyway, alongside this, the leveling system is always pretty opaque as well. And without consulting a guide, which I definitely did do while playing this game, I'm not going to try and mask that. I looked up a bunch of stuff. Without looking at a guide, it's not always obvious what putting points in to a particular attribute will actually do for you. And this is where we get to the first controversial change from previous games, the adaptability attribute. So this is one of the core reasons why I said the level of knowledge you have going in has a big part to play. the adaptability attribute essentially controls how effective your dodge roll is. So this is an absolutely core mechanic of the game. So it being weak at the start and needing to be leveled it caused a lot of people to respond quite negatively to it, shall we say. Whereas I knew that was the case going in, and so I worked on leveling adaptability as a top priority for me, to the point where I didn't even really notice that there was a problem. I wouldn't have clocked it, to be honest. I think the negative reaction to making rolling something that you have to level up to improve, I think it's a bit overblown personally. I mean, again, I want to acknowledge that I didn't personally suffer through it myself, so maybe that's unfair of me. But I think it's overblown in that I think it's a completely legitimate thing to make you have to level up to get good at. Like, I don't see why it's any different from any of the other things, the core parts of the game, the health, how much damage you do, for example. Like, why should rolling be the thing that's exempt? I don't see it as a problem per se. Of course, the implementation could have been poor, and maybe I missed that. I don't know. But I do think it's good to experiment with new systems in a game series like this. And I don't think this was particularly an improvement, and I don't think it comes back in any future Soulsborne games, but I also don't see it as a particular problem. So that's the adaptability change ticked off. Let's talk about another one of the crucial differences, the healing system. This is something that's changed in every game so far that I've played in the Soulsborne series. Demon Souls had healing items that could be farmed. Dark Souls had Estus flasks that refilled every time you die, but you couldn't grind or buy extra ones, although you could increase their maximum quantity and their strength. And this game kind of combines the two. The Estus flasks are back, but instead of starting with 5, you start with, I think, just 1, and you have to discover the shards in the levels as you play through the game. I ended my playthrough with 11 of them. But on top of the Estus flasks, there are also life gems, which are items that don't respawn when you die, so you have to be careful with how you use them, much like in Demon Souls. They heal you quite slowly, but for a larger amount than Estus flasks, and you can carry up to 99 of these at once. Life gems, very controversial. In how I played the game, I found them to be quite a good addition. I used them as basically an emergency backup. If I was in quite far from a bonfire or in the middle of a boss fight and I ran out of Estus flasks, only then would I start using life gems. And this made sense to me. Rather than why would I use something that runs out rather than my infinitely replenishing health source? That was my logic. And it costs money to go and buy more of them. I'd rather spend that money going up levels. However, I am aware that it's possible to use life gems to kind of break the healing system in the game if you're so inclined. They're very cheap, and an early vendor in the game can sell you literally an unlimited amount of them. So you can, if you want, have more capacity to heal than you could ever really need, which does change the dynamic of the game quite fundamentally. And for some, apparently this is enough to ruin the game. To me, even with that, I would view life gems as a bit like summons. The thing is with these games is that you can craft the difficulty of these games to make it appeal to you through a lot of different methods. As I said, I knew that the easiest way to get through the game at the start was to level up adaptability. I'd also looked up what some good builds were meant to be, and I chose one of those builds. It's a rapier build with XP gaining armor. So that was a way in which I made the game easier for myself. On the other hand, having unlimited life gems could have made the game even easier, or summoning for fights, which is when you pull in another player and you can do boss fights with them. Is also a very easy way of getting through the game, or a relatively easier way. Or using magic can also be an easier way of getting through the game. I didn't do those things, not because I've got any particular aversion to them. I've only ever summoned in Bloodborne, and I felt like I've sort of tried that out. I've done that now. And same with magic. I did a magic build in Demon Souls, so I feel like I've sort of tried magic out in these games, and I want to try other things. But my point is, though, that the ability to make the game much easier than the sort of a standard playthrough might be is nothing new. I think there's an overreaction to the fact that life gems can make the game much easier, because summoning makes the game also way, way easier. Perhaps even having the option of life gems, even if you don't do it, ruins the game for you. And who am I to say that that's wrong? That's a perfectly valid opinion, but it sits fine with me. And it doesn't really seem a big departure from the game or from the series in general. I guess my instinct would possibly be that maybe life gems are a little too accessible, like having them be sold for unlimited amounts of them for very cheap from a vendor right at the start. That does make it very, very easy to break the game. Like maybe people might accidentally do that or something, and that undermine their experience sort of by mistake. I don't know. Possibly they could have made it so that life gems got more expensive every time you bought one, in the same way that level ups cost more every time you do it. But I don't think it was really that deep. It really wasn't not a big part of my game, at least. Let me move on to the third big change in the game. The way the world and the levels are put together. And there's two elements to that. One is how coherent the world as a whole is. And the second is the design of each level. Again, both of which have come under quite a lot of criticism from some quarters. When it comes to the coherence of the world, I would absolutely defend this game. So the criticism is that one cool thing in Dark Souls 1 was that each area in the game is connected sort of rationally to each other area. So the world kind of feels like a real place. You know, to get to Blighttown, you have to travel down into the sewers and go underground, and Blighttown is physically located in the world underneath where you start. Or to get to New Londo, you have to physically fly over some mountains. Like there's a logical coherency to the physical space of the world. In Dark Souls 2, that's not true. For instance, famously at one point, you can take an elevator straight up into the sky, and up there you find a big lava castle. And it doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make sense. Logically, that's not how things work. And to some people, that's a big problem. To me, I don't think that's a problem at all. I think part of the language of the series, part of its core aesthetic, is this kind of inscrutability, playing with the idea that you can't rationally understand the world that you're in. Like, I think that's a big part of how the game works. And in fact, even in the opening cutscene of the game, the sort of, I guess, crone character, perhaps you would say, says something like, you're not going to understand why you do the things you do. I think it's a very clear and like central theme of the game that you're not meant to understand the world. So in other words, I think what that is trying to do is to have you connect with the game sort of as an experience, connect with it emotionally, think about what feelings it creates in the player, think about it on that level, rather than thinking about it like on a purely rationalistic, does this make sense on a like logical kind of level. That's why I'm not personally interested in trying to get to the bottom of the lore in the game. I get the impression that to understand and categorize everything is not something that would enhance my experience. Of course, if you disagree and you love the lore, I wish you nothing but joy. But for me, I'm not interested. So the world feels already illogical and incoherent. So I think the world structure not making like completely logical sense is something that you could recreate in the real world. That's not a problem to me. And it only helped with the mysterious, dreamlike quality of the game. I'd also add to that in this game now you can warp to bonfires as soon as you unlock them. I wonder if that's had an impact on people's feeling that the world is like super incoherent in a way that they don't like. Because before, in the first half of Dark Souls 1, you had to walk everywhere. So you got to know how the world was structured like on like the back of your hand, because you had to be able to navigate to a variety of different places. In this one, you've only got to navigate somewhere once, unlock a bonfire, and then you can teleport to and from there as much as you want. So I wonder if that makes... I wonder if, like, on some level, that's part of what people's criticism is about the world feeling incoherent. Maybe they feel like they, like, understand it on the instinctive level that you play games less, partially because of that, but I don't know. That's just speculation. So, yeah, that's my defense of the world coherency. The level design part of it, though, I do kind of agree with the criticisms of this a bit more. Dark Souls 2 has got way more bonfires in each level than the previous games. The previous games, instead of having loads of bonfires, tended to create shortcuts that you could discover, which would link you back to your bonfire. So you'd go through a level and then you'd unlock a door or something, and you'd realize that this was the bonfire that you were at before. And now, instead of having to go through the whole bit that you went through just now, all you have to do in the future is go through the door. There's something really satisfying about that experience in the previous games. Something would like click in your head, and suddenly the geography of the level would slot into place, and it was a very satisfying experience. Instead of doing that and having shortcuts and things like that, this game has basically just added bonfires. So that means you don't get the satisfaction that you used to get of like everything piecing together in your head. And I guess it frees level designers up so that they don't need to create these loops in their levels now. But I'm not sure that they really took advantage of that, or I'm not sure that really added enough to the game to make up for the loss of that little clicking moment where suddenly you understood where you were in a whole new way. And the final set of differences I want to talk about here are the enemies and the bosses in the game. The first major change, I feel like this has gone... I talked about all these videos that I watched, and this does occasionally get brought up, but I feel like this is fundamentally was quite large to my experience of the game, is that now if you kill a specific enemy enough times, they will stop respawning. As opposed to the previous games where it didn't matter how many times you killed a particular enemy, they would keep coming back every time. And I've got really mixed feelings about this change. I don't know what exactly to make of it. On the positive side, it takes away that feeling that you sometimes get of that you're like running into a insurmountable wall again and again and again and making no progress, because now even if you kill one guy, like you have made some progress, you're getting close to the point where that NPC will stop respawning. So at that level, this mechanic can lower some of the frustration of the game. And the game is all about balancing like sort of the frustration versus the jubilation that you feel when you overcome that frustration. So removing frustration sounds like it should be a straightforwardly good thing, but it is a little bit more ambiguous than that. Like it does make it kind of easier in some respects. And the other sort of element of it that I feel like it does complicate it as to whether it's a good thing or not is one tension that I have while playing these games is a decision you've got to make is when are you going to fight the enemies or when are you going to run past them? Because running past them is not always, but very, very often an option. And you have to make that judgment for yourself when you're playing. And this is an issue that I have, and it certainly won't be a problem for every player. So I'm not necessarily blaming the game for this. I know this is me. Maybe I'm a weird guy. This is how my brain works, is that the enemies, the fact that they stop spawning, to me, that answers the question of when should I start running past them. The answer is don't run past them. Keep fighting them because eventually they'll stop spawning. So to clear that up, normally in these games, I'll kill the enemies a bunch of times and then after a certain point, I'll feel like these enemies are nothing to me now, they're trivial to me, and I'll start running past them and get to the bit that I'm actually stuck on. But in this game, I just sort of don't do that. I keep fighting even the super trivial ones because I know that at some point they'll stop spawning, and that's like feels like a thing that I'm sort of working towards, which means I end up having the same like boring fights with these boring NPCs over and over again until they stop spawning. And I know that this is a me problem, but I do think like the game, it does feel kind of cool when they stop spawning. I feel like the game is kind of slightly incentivizing a kind of boring way of playing the game. And I know I could not do it, but the game kind of is telling me to do it in a way. Like I don't know how to apportion the blame on this one. Like maybe this is like 70% my problem and 30% the game's, or 80-20 or something, but it's something to bring up.
There's a long list of things in games that are like really your fault, but you feel it at least partially the game's fault, right? Just like, well, I don't have to do it, I suppose, but I do end up doing it, and it does get boring.
It's telling me I should do it. It's something it's a bit like the sort of similar situation to how people never use the Master Ball in Pokemon. It's just one of those decisions that we all sort of make as gamers. But it kind of sucks that we don't ever use the Master Ball. But obviously this one's a bit more niche. Like I'm sure most people don't do this, but there'll be people who think like me and who have their game extended a bit. I think the section that I most felt this was a problem in for me was the Tower of Flame area. And the Tower of Flame area, there are these enemies called Heidi Knights. It's a very, very early area in the game, and these Heidi Knights are very powerful enemies. But when you first enter the area, they're sort of, I'm not sure if they're asleep, but they don't attack you. They're like leaning against a wall. There are a bunch of them, but they do nothing to you unless you attack them first. However, once you beat the first boss in this area, then they attack you. Now, again, I'm creating my own problems here because once you've beat the first boss, you can leave. But I wanted to go and beat the second boss. There's a second optional boss in the area, which is a big Dark Souls 1 reference, and I wanted to see it. I wanted to fight this boss. But my issue is now all of these incredibly difficult guys, these Heidi Knights, are popping up, and I want to fight them. I want them to die. I want them to stop spawning. But it meant that I was stuck in this horrible, painful loop for ages of these really tough enemies killing me over and over again. And I died to them so consistently. And slowly they stopped spawning. But it meant I spent literally hours, and it was a real waste of my time. There's no two ways about it. Like, I shouldn't have done that. And the other effect of this was I did end up leveling up loads from that experience. I guess I sort of inadvertently made myself grind for hours. Like, that wasn't really my plan, but that is what happened. And basically I spent the entire rest of the game being massively over-leveled. And that's why I would say this was by far my easiest gaming experience with Soulsborne, because from this point onwards, everything was much easier than I'm sure it was meant to be. I mean, I had a smaller version of this on Dark Souls 1. I found the gargoyle boss early in that game to be a real barrier, and it took me hours to get through it. But once I did, I'd leveled up so much fighting the enemies between the bonfire and the gargoyles that I was definitely over leveled for much of the rest of the game. But this is way, way higher. And it led to the point where I found most of the bosses in this game to be much easier, certainly easier than most of the levels that they were in, but I would say almost certainly easier than they're meant to be. Definitely over half of the bosses I died to less than 5 times. There were many bosses I killed on my first try, and that sounds like a bad thing, and I feel like I should think it's a bad thing. I feel like if I were a good Soulsborne player, I'd be like, oh no, that sucks. I did find that quite satisfying, I'm not going to lie. It felt like my hard work and those guys at the start paid off.
The important thing
obviously I was...
The important thing to know about, or the way to think about all of these Soulsborne games is that whatever way you can find to beat them is legitimate. I guess maybe not if you hack into the game or something, maybe, but like if you can.
Well, no, fair play.
if you just level yourself up massively, that's fine. If you use a summon, that's fine. It's the toxic weirdos who are just like, no, you need to get good and anything but proper getting good isn't really all real Dark Souls or whatever. That's bullshit, man. If you did it, you did it. And if you had a good time, that's what matters.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as I say, you can choose to make the game easier in a bunch of different ways, and I chose to do some of them, and I chose not to do other ones, and I think I found a lane that suited me, and I did find it really satisfying. And there were bosses who I killed really quickly, but I still enjoyed the mechanics of them. Like, even though I wasn't stuck at them for ages, I sort of got to know what their mechanics were and was able to kill them. I think one I really wanted to highlight that really stood out to me as a fun boss in this game is called the Executioner's Chariot. It's a boss which is like a horse-drawn chariot racing around an arena. And when you enter the arena, you can't fight the boss directly. What you have to do is work your way to a lever. You pull the lever to close a gate, which means that the chariot then runs into the gate. And it like falls down to the ground and like flails around, and then you fight one of the horses from the chariots. And it felt so different from any of the other bosses in the series, really. It really stood out to me as a lot of fun. I loved the aesthetic of it as well. Like you could hear it pound towards you as it ran around the arena, its hooves like galloping at you. The visual of it crashing on the ground and flailing around, it really stood out. It was really memorable to me. And on the other hand, I also enjoyed the simplicity of quite a few of the boss fights in this game. The Smelter Demon, Lost Sinner, Twin Dragon Riders, they're all kind of relatively like humanoid fights. Like they feel like straight up fights. They feel like you're going toe to toe with someone not that different from you. And I enjoy those fights in this game. It was fun. And there's a criticism of this game that too many of the bosses are humanoids. And like, it's true that there are a lot of humanoids in this game. I think roughly 2/3 of the bosses that I faced were sort of broadly humanoid, but it's not something that I would have really thought of if I hadn't heard other people say it. Like, I wouldn't have thought, God, why are there so many humanoids in this game? It was still fun. It was still varied. Each of them had, different sorts of mechanics. Like, them being humanoid doesn't mean that they're the same. They all had different things that were engaging in different ways. One criticism of the bosses that I would agree with a little bit more, though, is there are quite a lot of them where you have to fight a bunch of things at once. Some people have claimed that fighting lots of things at once is like against the spirit of the series or something, and I don't agree with that. There have been lots of fights against multiple enemies in previous games. My only issue with it here is I think it's maybe a bit overused. Something like between 1/4 and 1/3 of all the boss fights that I had in this game used multiple mobs to make it harder, effectively. One that really stood out to me was the Royal Rat Authority, which is this kind of big, allegedly rat. It looks a bit more like a dog, but that's okay. Plus 4 highly toxic rats that if they get you are basically going to give you toxic, which basically means you're dead. So you've got to fight the big guy, but you've also got to fight 4 annoying guys at the same time. And that one was quite a frustrating fight. And because the actual boss, if you remove those 4 rats, is like trivially easy. I think the second time I managed to kill the rats, I killed the boss. Like, just the one-on-one with the boss is very easy. So the addition of the rats doesn't really add much to it in terms of fun, but it does add to it in terms of annoying.
Yeah, they're a nightmare. They always do. They always have the fucking bosses with like a couple of little annoying guys that just hassle you the whole time.
Yeah.
The Capra Demon in Dark Souls 1, they're fucking terrible. I hate that shit.
Yeah, that's a great example. Or the Tower Knight in Demon Souls, like the second one in the whole series pretty much. You've got the archers that you have to take down first. So I don't think it's a huge issue. I just think they've dialed up to there's slightly too many of that specific mechanic in the game. So I think it uses its shock factor, it loses its surprise a little bit. Maybe to tone it down a little bit would be my advice. So I feel like I've been talking for ages about this. So let me wrap up a little bit here. I want to say I massively binge played this game. I have never played one of these games as quickly as I played this game, and not even close. They normally take me weeks to play. I played this entire game in 4 days, and 2 of those games were working days. So basically my entire free time for this 4-day stretch I spent playing this game. I put 39 hours into the game, and I beat the final boss at level 151, which I did go back and check my Dark Souls character. I think I was at like 80 in that game.
Wow.
So to give you a sense of how leveled I was, it's dramatically different. I should say as well, I haven't played the DLC for this game, even though it's included in the package I've got. But unlike the first game, you can play the DLC later. How Dark Souls works, and I don't think I knew this at the time, is once you finish the final boss, that's it.
Yeah.
The game restarts in New Game Plus. You can't do any more, which is a bit annoying because I'd love to play the Dark Souls DLC, but to do that, I'd have to replay at least 2/3 of Dark Souls to get to the point where you can play the DLC.
Yeah.
That's quite annoying.
That's why I never played the Bloodborne DLC either. Because I was looking forward to it, and I was like, I have to start all the way from the beginning. That was already a pretty big slog for me. I'm not doing that again.
No, that sounds like too much. My loose thinking in my head is I'll continue playing these FromSoft games at the point where I've eventually caught up and there's no more games. Maybe then I would consider replaying Dark Souls and Bloodborne and getting the DLC done. But in the much, much nearer term, I definitely intend to play the DLC for Dark Souls 2 because I can just do that now. I can just log on to my level 151 character and keep playing, which is a much better way of doing it. I feel like I've emphasized how easy it is. I don't want to... There were a lot of very frustrating moments in this game still. Like, that still got that classic From Software sting. Sometimes frustrating in not the right ways, though, I would say. Sometimes that's the game's fault. For instance, it's strangely difficult to aim down with your weapon. I don't know why. Like when rats run at you and you're trying to stab them, like you very often miss, and I don't really understand why that happens. And there are some frustrations which weren't the game's fault, but like, you always have your stories when you play these games, don't you? There was one point where I think I'd just beaten a boss, and so I had tons and tons of souls on me, and I died, which sucks, but you can run back to the point that you died and collect your souls.
Yeah.
So I was heading back to my souls, and my controller died. It went completely dead. So my guy's just standing there getting attacked. And I ran and went and grabbed my controller. But by the time I came back, it was too late. And I think it was like 30,000 souls. And this was early on. So that was a lot of souls were gone. And that was tough, man.
The agony and ecstasy of
But
age.
it's all part of it's all part of the experience of Dark Souls, though, isn't it? Yeah. So let me finish off now finally and say, I think the game was maybe a little less sort of special to me than Dark Souls felt. There's a certain magic to Dark Souls that's kind of hard to describe. And possibly I liked it less than Bloodborne as well, but it's been a decade since I played that game, so I don't know. But I would say I think I preferred it to Demon Souls. So that's sort of how I see the Soulsborne games being ranked at the moment. I need to acknowledge I had a lot more tools at my disposal than most when they first play it, in terms of I'd seen so much content about it. I knew so much going in. I wasn't afraid to look up good builds and stuff like that. So maybe that's helped with my positive feeling towards the game overall. But again, this game was very well reviewed at launch. Like it's got a 91 on Metacritic. So I think a lot of people will enjoy this game. If you've enjoyed any of the others in this series, I think you will almost certainly enjoy this as well. Don't be put off by the backlash. I don't know. I suspect that's like a relatively vocal minority of people that have played the game that really didn't like it. I think maybe people that were so into Dark Souls specifically that any deviation from it was a problem. And that's not to say there are no actual problems with the game. There are. But I think most people wouldn't find them to be game ruining. Perhaps it's a little less original than Dark Souls. But basically it's still a banger and I would recommend it. And that's my Dark Souls 2 take. Any more for any more?
Yeah, I think there was, while the reviews were good, there was like definitely a backlash at the time. I think we've been living in a world of a backlash to the backlash for quite a long time now, and it definitely has achieved, I think, something of a status as like the hipster Dark Souls. Actually, the best Dark Souls is the one you didn't play. that kind of thing.
I think if we're going to go real hipster with
Oh, I
it as
see.
well, I do see some people online saying that the edition that I played, Scholar of the First Sin, which, as I said, changed enemy placements and stuff, is the inferior version.
I've heard people
And
say that,
they say that you're better off buying the original game and then buying the DLC because the enemy placements in the Scholar of the First Sin are like deliberately harder, and like they sort of seem to be like going out of their way to be annoying, apparently.
Mhm.
And I can't remember who said it. Maybe it was in Joseph Anderson's video, or I can't remember whose video it was, but they said that it feels like, maybe it was even H-Bombs. He said like, view it as like a game that you would play after you have already played Dark Souls 2.
Yeah.
Like, for your second go at Dark Souls 2, you could do Scholar of the First Sin, but don't do it for the first one. However, Scholar of the First Sin, everyone that I've seen that's played it in the last decade or so seems to have played that one. I think I might have got it free at some point years ago in like games with gold or something, like in 2018 or something like that. I don't know.
It's by far the easiest one to actually access.
I think so.
I don't know.
They're both,
I don't know
think-
if they sell the original non-Scholar version on Steam. Maybe they do. I'm not sure.
I think they do on Steam, but I don't think they do on PlayStation or whatever. So, I played it on PlayStation for context. So yeah. But yeah, so the real hipster version of Dark Souls is Dark Souls 2 base edition with the DLC. But for my sins, I've tragically gone for Scholars of the First Sin, but it didn't seem to ruin my experience too much. So don't worry about that, I would say, if you're a filthy casual fan like me.
I'm trying to work out if that enhances or damages your reputation as the bad boy of the podcast. I'm not sure.
No idea. I think everything that I say and do enhances that reputation.
Well, that goes without saying. That goes without saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
But the fact that I said it,
of course,
crazy.
I played Dark Souls 2 back when it came out. It was my first ever Souls born. Well, there was no born at the time. It was all Souls back then. Game.
Souls all the way down, baby.
And basically, because there'd been all this hype about Dark Souls, and I thought, okay, well, the sequel's coming out. I'll give that a try. And I did get quite far. I beat the first 4 main bosses. And then you go on to the castle afterwards. But that's a good chunk of the game.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that is pretty far through. It's like 2/3 at least.
Yeah, something like that. And then I got into the castle and I got up to a boss in the castle and I just was like, ugh. I just got immediately slapped down. And I was just like, I'm just done with this. I couldn't be bothered. Now, if I went back and played it, I think I'd probably give it more of a time because I've played a bunch of these games now. I'm more used to it. It feels less wildly obtuse, You just get used to that kind of game. But I did enjoy it at the time from what I played of it, and it felt intriguing. I do, in the years since, I've played a bunch of the others, and I've watched a huge amount of like long lore videos and so on. And I do feel like,
you've got the lore knowledge, have you?
Absolutely. Well, no,
you could clear everything up for us.
I don't have any grand lore theories about Dark Souls 2. I'm sorry to let you and our listeners down, but that's mainly because I know it feels a little less coherent. I will say I don't think it goes against my theories for Dark Souls 1. If you want to go back and listen to the episode where we discuss that, you can hear that. I think it follows those theories, but I think it's kind of going its own way a bit, and it doesn't really, from what I remember, it doesn't really feel like it coheres. At any rate, I didn't feel compelled to like learn that as much, like keep learning more and more about it and like think up ideas and stuff. So I think it's like less of a clear vision for the story, but I wouldn't really be very confident making that claim even. So yeah, that's my kind of position on it. But yeah, I'm glad you're a hipster. I'm glad you're a bad boy. And I'm glad you played Dark Souls 2.
Thank you, Alex.
Well, you're welcome.
Any way we could tempt you to Soulsborne, Soph?
I mean, I don't know, because I've talked about this before on stream with friends and stuff, that like I do want to play Elden Ring. Because I think I would like the vibe of it. I think it is quite gothic. And I love the sort of aesthetic of it. I love the writing for it. I love the bits and pieces that I've heard. It is just I just don't have a lot of patience, I think, for video games. I've never really been, I don't know. Even when I was a kid playing games, I used to get very frustrated with games like Crash Bandicoot or whatever, where you'd have to do multiple tries. Like I rage quit a lot when I was a kid, and as an adult, I have less time and even less patience for video games because I'm like, I think also my issue with Elden Ring, which like a lot of people are like, if you're starting any kind of Souls game, Elden Ring's probably a good bet because it's quite open, open world, which means like if you get stuck on a particular boss, you can just go do something else, as opposed to a lot of the other games being quite linear. But for me, which I think that is probably a good point, but also for me, just because it's open world and it's up to you what you do, I also really struggle with games like that, where they don't just sort of really clearly, I do kind of like to be spoon-fed a little bit what I'm supposed to be doing, just because I don't really get a lot of enjoyment out of just like exploring a world. I just get quite bored of that quite quickly. So I'd like to. Again, it would be kind of similar to Clobbers, where I'm like, I'm interested in it despite the gameplay, which like for a lot of people, I think obviously with these games, the gameplay is the main attraction. For me, it is like a major detractor. It's a major thing that I'm not looking forward to about the video game. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it would surprise you. Like, I think part of the, maybe, I mean, I don't know, but because you mentioned Crash Bandicoot, which obviously is a game I talked about maybe like a couple of gaming episodes ago.
But it's also a game that Dark Souls is very much in conversation with. I think we can.
Absolutely. But with the sort of easier games, I feel like I get more frustrated more easily at those games than I do at Dark Souls.
Maybe, yeah, because you kind of know the point is
in
that
those games I'm like, okay. Yeah, and then I find like surprised at how easy I find them, because I expect to find them almost insurmountably difficult.
Yeah.
And instead they're just like pretty difficult.
Yeah.
Whereas if I die in Crash Bandicoot, I'm like, for God's sake, this is a
children's
game.
Baby game. Yeah, I think like I did have a positive experience. I played the Lies of P demo on stream when that came out. And I really enjoyed it. And obviously that's also got like a really nice sort of gothic aesthetic, which I really enjoyed. But I was kind of surprised by how much I enjoyed. I found it very difficult, but like I think if I did play a Souls-like, it would almost definitely be on stream, because I do think there's a unique allure to playing it on stream, because you have this group of people watching you and rooting for you, and maybe even providing advice or pointing out patterns to you that you maybe don't notice by yourself. Kind of had it's like playing with an older sibling or something, and then you have like extra people
or
to
direction,
celebrate.
I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
In your case.
Exactly. Or like, and then you have extra people to cheer you on when you do actually beat a thing, and it's like, oh yeah, you did it, hell yeah. So I think if I did play one, it would probably be on stream. Also, because everyone wants to watch you suffer in a game like that, but they also want to watch you succeed. Like, there's equal satisfaction in both sides of that, genuinely. So yeah, I'm curious. I am Souls-like curious. I just don't know if I'm, I just don't know if I'm all the way there yet.
I will say that
if you do it, let us know and we'll tune in.
Yeah.
I will say that
go on, Alex.
the difficulty of these games is somewhat overblown. They can be very difficult, but they've just the kind of legend of how difficult they are has just been overblown. I remember,
which I believe. Yeah. I think like I'm a fairly competent gamer. Like I'm not great by any means, and I really struggle at like shooters and stuff. But like, I think I'd probably get a hang of the mechanics and stuff. I mean, like, Elden Ring is like extremely popular with like normies, like people who play mostly FIFA. So like, I don't think it's beyond my reach. I think for me, it's just more of like a time investment versus reward issue, where it's like, I don't know if I can spend like an hour on one particular boss and then also make no progress otherwise. Like, I think that would feel, in my head, that would feel like a waste of time. But maybe when you're actually doing it, maybe when you're in it, it doesn't feel that wasteful. I don't know,
It kind of does when you're doing it, but then afterwards you forget about that because of how great you feel.
I did it.
It's a bit like if you've ever been on like a really long flight, like when you try and remember what happened in the flight. Yeah, when you try and remember what happened in the flight, like somehow there's not enough time there. Not enough happened to fill the time, so your memory of it just disappears. Or so it's what people, maybe it's a bit like what people say after childbirth as well. Like that hormone gets released, and then suddenly you forget how bad it was.
That's the thing. It's not a good recommendation for me. I'm terrified of childbirth.
It's just like childbirth.
And also,
don't worry about it.
And
it's
also,
just like childbirth.
I hate long flights, and I have to do them every year because I visit fucking South Africa every year, which is like a 14-hour flight.
The game doesn't make you either take a flight or give birth. But what I mean is
it's like the satisfaction of doing either of these
you forget
things.
pretty easily.
Ed, are you saying that childbirth is the Dark Souls of life experiences?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think that's actually pretty apt. Yeah, I do think that.
Yeah.
I do think that.
I think everyone.
Would you say that beating a child, beating an
Wow.
elder,
Sorry.
beating
Sorry. Just take a turn.
I was gonna say
What?
beating a childbirth is what I was actually gonna say,
Oh, I
but that would
see.
make less sense. Would you say that beating Elden Ring is just like giving birth to a child?
Well, I haven't actually done either of those two things yet, but I will let
Which
you
one is
know
more
But
likely?
when
Which
as
one
one's
a
of
more
those two
man,
things
likely?
comes
would you
out.
say that these two things equate in terms
Yeah,
of
let me-
pain and challenge?
Let me inform you all. Let me give you
I
my
have
expert
beaten
opinion.
Elden Ring, and I'll say that was definitely
But I
much
have
more
given
difficult
child
than having a child. I can say 100% childbirth is a piece of cake. It's a
peanuts.
breeze
It's
compared
nothing.
to beating
Yeah, I
millennia.
mean, if you just look at the
I beat
numbers.
millennia, and
If you
I'm
just
the
look at the
one who
numbers,
suffered. Everyone
billions-
knows that, right? Everyone knows
Billions
that.
of people. Billions of people have given
Exactly.
birth. How many people have beaten Elden Ring?
Exactly.
I rest my
Exactly.
case.
Exactly.
I'm
glad we
rest our
established
case.
that. I'm glad we established that. And on that, I think we should probably move on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because what else is there to say? Let's move on to the next game, which probably this little segue would have worked better if it wasn't my game. But it is. It's going to be me talking now.
It's
Yeah, that
Mafia.
feels quite aggressive when it's your game. Let's move on and get to the really important
Exactly,
game.
exactly. That's what I meant. Yeah, I didn't mean for it to come out that way, but it did. And,
Wow.
maybe it's true when we think about it, right? Maybe it's true. I have been playing Mafia: Definitive Edition. Mafia is originally a game that the original version of Mafia came out in 2002, mainly on the PC, but there were versions on the PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox. I believe they weren't very good, but I didn't play them. I didn't research them because I haven't played any of those games. What I have played is the remake that came out in 2020, the Definitive Edition. And to be clear, this isn't just like they up the resolution and shit. This is like a full-scale remake. It's completely made for the kind of PlayStation 4 generation. While the game is like pretty much every like mission has a new mission in the same, every mission is back. The missions are completely remade. The cutscenes are completely remade, completely revoiced. The city is completely rebuilt. It's slightly changed, but it's largely the same, but it does look completely different. It's actually a very pretty game. It looks very kind of PlayStation 4-y now, but still very, very attractive. And yeah, I thought I'd give this game a go. I've never played any of the Mafia games, and I picked up the Mafia Definitive Edition. I'm going to say this a bunch in this segment, so please bear with me.
Mafia DE.
DE, maybe? No, I feel like I feel it's my penance now to say the full Definitive Edition every single time. So you're going to have to let's just sit through it, listeners. Yeah, so I picked up the Definitive Edition trilogy for very cheap in some sales earlier, and I thought I'd give them a go. I'm going to be totally honest that Mafia 3 is the one with the really interesting politics, and I'm working my way up to it. This one has less interesting politics, but it's still a cool game to play through. So what happens in this game is you play as Tommy Angelo. I guess he's an Italian immigrant, although he came as a child, to America in the city of what's called Lost Heaven, which is basically Chicago. I feel that Lost Heaven is a weird name for a city. Imagine
That's a bad name.
establishing a
Like, that's a
city.
bad
Feels a lot
name for a
closer to
fictional
Los
city.
Angeles.
Yeah.
Los Angeles? No, it
Lost
Lost Heaven.
Angeles, like
makes no sense, but it's basically
right there,
it's
guys.
That's
basically
goofy, yeah.
Chicago.
oh wait,
But I just like
my
the
mic
idea.
was really far away.
I
when
do
I
like
did
Chicago.
that.
Yeah, I do like the idea of just living in a city with like a sad name to it. Just imagine going to work every day in Lost Heaven. Like,
I live
couldn't
in
they have
Lost
given you?
Heaven.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we all do in our hearts live in Lost Heaven, but I'd rather
Listen,
not live
this
literally.
timeline is a Lost Heaven.
It's very true.
Hmm.
But that's where it's set. It's set in a kind. This game came out just after GTA 3, and obviously was like at minimum. I mean, it came out about a year later. At minimum, they when GTA 3 came out, like someone came down to the office and said, "We're doing this now," and made big changes to make it a lot like GTA 3. And similarly, it's in a fake city that's not quite Chicago, but plainly is meant to be Chicago. And you play as Tommy Angelo, who starts off as a cab driver. And one day he takes a couple of gangsters drive by and they wreck their car and they run to his car to get a ride, and you have to drive them away from the enemy gangsters. And this gets you into the mob. And eventually, over the course of 8 years, it's set between 1930 and 1938. That's what happens over the course of the game. Your time in the Mafia with a bunch of characters and so on, a bunch of missions. Overall, the story, while it's quite well told, as I said, all of the voice acting and cutscenes have been completely not just remodeled, but revoiced and like rewritten. They're just like completely redone. On a scene by scene basis, it's quite good. On the overall plot basis, it's still pretty much the original game, which means it's kind of almost insultingly basic. If you played this game for 1 hour and then someone put a gun to your head and made you predict what would happen for the rest of the game, you would very likely be quite correct. It's incredibly predictable. It's just what you would expect from this kind of Mafia story. You can probably guess which character.
I like you're so reluctant to predict what's going to happen in the game after you've played it for an hour that you require a gun to your head in order to give that prediction. You're very Mafia brain.
That's my
You'll be sleeping with the fishes if you don't give an answer.
That's my commitment to play the game in its correct order. I got no mind. I don't want to think about what's going to happen. That's not really true, but
yeah,
very much. Pretty much every character you think might die is going to die. What you think the ending of the game might be is probably what it's going to be. So it's quite inherently generic because it's based on this game from 2002, which is kind of when we were first starting to have these kind of stories in games. I mean, if you compare the story in GTA 3 to whatever the story in GTA 6 is, I guarantee 6 is going to be significantly more sophisticated, even if you improved all the individual elements. But this kind of simplicity kind of doesn't stop there. So one of the most remarkable things about this game is that it is an open world game, just like GTA. It's set on this city. The entire layout of the city, you can see it on the map. There's also some countryside around it. But for the main game, this open world is basically irrelevant. The way the structure works is you have your first mission, you play that through, there's some cutscenes, there's some story, and then the mission ends, the screen fades to black, there's an interstitial screen, and then the next mission begins. There is no opportunity to just wander around the open world, and if you could there's nothing there to do, really, although I will get onto that in a sec. There is a bit more detail in that. And then you just do mission after mission after mission after mission, and then that's the end of the game. So there are more missions than I just said the word mission for. And there's something just kind of refreshing, to be honest, about playing that. I found it kind of bizarre that oh wait, when are they going to give me some downtime to go and do little side missions and stuff? The answer is there is none and there are none. It is basically just a linear game like, Uncharted or whatever, or The Last of Us, but every level takes place in this city, essentially. That's the way it works. There are plenty of times where you're asked to drive from one location to another, usually with the gangsters in the car with you, because you're the wheelman. Remember, you're a cab driver. And, they'll talk as you go. Or there's also some radio broadcasts that usually are on as you go from place to place. But that's it. That's the whole thing. So pretty much all you do in this game is drive from place to place, or occasionally in a car chase, or shoot things, or run around an area shooting. Occasionally you fist fight someone. That's basically it. That's pretty much the entire game. So it's very bare bones, and it's kind of interesting the way, those are the things you can do. So they really kind of finesse the game to address that. For instance, earlier on, there's a quite notorious mission where through some quite ludicrous contrivances, you become a race car driver. So you just have to do a whole race in a race car. Has very little reason for you to do that, but there's two things you can do in this game. You can shoot and you can drive, and they're going to get everything they can out of the driving. The shooting itself, it's basically a cover system. It's pretty good. As the pure gameplay, it works pretty well, but none of the missions are terribly interesting kind of structurally. They're just, going to a place.
Do you know if they've updated the shooting and driving mechanics at all since 2000?
I should say this game does play. I mean, I haven't played the original, but I watched a bunch of footage of it, and it does play significantly better, as far as I can tell. Certainly differently than the originals.
Right.
The shooting especially is it's got a cover system. It's very over the shoulder. The original game had a weird thing where the entire game takes place from a single, well, apart from cutscenes, takes place from a single camera angle that is basically waist high behind the main character. And it just, when you shoot, just like a reticle appears on screen. It looks very awkward to me. I mean, fairly par for the course for 2002, to be honest. Nothing terribly outrageous. But the new one, it's very much like a modern shooting style. And the driving, apparently the original game, the driving handle was very bad. Something that is quite interesting in this is that, while I wouldn't say the handling is bad, it does reflect the fact that you're driving cars from the 1930s. The cars feel quite old. When you get up to higher speeds, they kind of shake a lot, and if you feel like, whoa, shit, I'm going 60 whole miles an hour. Can you believe it? Sometimes they can really take quite a long time to turn. So if you're going fast down a thing and then you need to make a hard left, you really have to start slowing down before you get to the end, or you will simply just run into the walls.
That's not a problem for me as someone who plays games like these as a very polite driver who follows the rules. That's like a fun thing that I know that people do that sometimes for fun. I remember when I played LA Noire, that's basically how I played it, entirely. It's I'm gonna follow the traffic rules.
I think that's that's down to your fundamental respect for the police profession, isn't it, Sophie?
Yes, famously.
You play a cop in that game, and you would never break any laws as a policeman.
I would never break any laws.
No good policeman would.
The moment a mission, comes along that requires you to break a law, sorry.
Yeah.
No more game for me.
It's out. You're like
GTA 5 was very short for you, wasn't it, Sophie?
Yes.
You're like Elon Musk when he said that he couldn't play GTA 5 because he couldn't bring himself to shoot any cops. You're just like him.
Did he really say that?
Did he
Yes,
say
he
that?
said that. He said
Oh my god,
that.
what a bootlegger. He's so cringe. What a simp.
Well, he's your role model in this regard, apparently, Sophie. So
Okay, yeah. Fair. Gross. Okay, all right.
Sophie.
And sometimes you are in.
What are you like?
And sometimes
what
you
am
are.
I like?
And sometimes you are literally in car chases, so you do unfortunately have to break the law. But
well, can't you just both agree to stick to the speed limit as part of the rules of the race? There's no need to break the law.
I will say, actually, this game might be Sophie's perfect game because you driving a cab right at the beginning of the game, you have the ability to press, or at least on the PlayStation, the big touchpad thing in the middle, and that puts on a speed limiter that forces you under the speed limit.
Hell yeah.
That's real truck simulator territory. I love it.
Exactly. This could be your dream game, Sophie. Maybe consider that in future. Fuck Elden Ring. This is what you want.
Yeah.
This is what you want.
Everyone's trying to get me to play Elden Ring. I need more traffic simulators.
Everyone picks one of the two, don't
Yeah.
they? It's
Traffic
people are which one are you going to
simulator,
pick? And
Elden Ring.
It's like that.
it's like choosing a Pokemon.
It's like that,
Yeah.
that retrograde 90s book where men are from Elden Ring, women are from Mafia, Definitive Edition.
Yeah.
It's
Women do
real
be
knowledge.
loving Mafia.
Yeah, they
Forget
love
women
it.
do be shopping.
They love it.
Women do be Mafia-ing.
They love that game with
Yeah.
2 women in it.
Oof.
Yeah, there's 2 women in it.
Jeez.
Oof.
And one of them's
And they don't even
like a
talk
floozy.
like this.
One of them's
they
like
don't
a
even say
floozy.
coffee.
I know one of them. No, those 2
One of
women
them
both
sa-
talk like
one
that.
of them talks like that. Oh, that's
Both of them
great.
do.
They're
Both
not
of
even
them do.
from New York. What do you mean?
Anyway,
A
so yeah.
floozy. That's a crazy word.
A floozy, yeah, a floozy. She's a floozy. It's the 30s.
I'm gonna look up what the word floozy means.
I mean, she's
As tawdry or sexually promiscuous.
Yes, that is exactly who she is.
Right.
I mean,
Abroad.
literally, I think abroad is more general than that. It's more broad even than that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hello.
But floozy, I mean, the woman the second woman in this game is literally a sex worker who one of the Mafia guys gets sweet on. And
right. So quite
some
literally
drama,
a floozy.
literally a
Got it.
floozy.
Okay.
Yeah, don't look to this game for great female representation. It is based on a game from 2002, to be fair.
Oof.
Before
Before women were
crime.
people. We only became people in like 2012.
Something like that.
Something like that.
13.
Yeah.
But now we're unpeople again. So.
Of course. Of course. Yeah, so it's old-timey cars. That's nice. I will say that having checked out the footage from the original game really failed. Really, like the actual city itself barely looks like it's old-timey. I mean, if it weren't for the old-timey cars, you could pretty much think that's a modern city. They pretty much just clearly went and took a bunch of photos of buildings and just like put the texture straight on the building and did very little with it. This modern game, it looks like the 30s. It looks old-timey. There's lots of 30s music on the radio, so it grasps the time pretty well. And yeah, the characters are all very kind of what was it you were saying before, Sophie, with your incredible accent earlier?
Floozy?
Floozy? No, it was other stuff. But they all talk like that. They all talk like gangsters.
Okay,
they
no,
all
I
talk
love
like
that. I love that.
That's fun.
Great.
Yeah,
that's one of my favorite things. It's a great accent. I love it.
It's a good one. And it pretty much lives up to that, to that dream. But yeah, it's a very straightforward story and gameplay. Something that's actually like, I don't know, in a desperate grasp for some relevance here. Something I find it quite interesting was to compare it to was all the discourse around the recent game Crimson Desert, which we haven't played. You may have noticed. It's the big game out. Or discussed. I'm going to discuss it a little bit here. I've not played it, but the word about this game, the general consensus is that it's like a huge world with a huge amount of like weird little mechanics and all weird little things you can do and huge amounts of side content, but there is just like almost no story. There's almost no reason for you to be there. It's just like you get plonked in the world and you're just like, oh, explore it and find stuff to do. And there's almost nothing more than that, from what I've heard. And I just find it interesting that I was hearing about this while playing this game Mafia that is like the exact opposite of that. It's like, it's all the reason you're playing the game and the other stuff, maybe this. I will say that it seems that, however, I was somewhat wrong in my appraisal of this game. Because my understanding was that there was no chance in the main story to go in the open world, which is true. But there is what's called a free ride. It's on the title screen, and this is you can just wander around the city version. And I did try that out, and from what I understood, there was basically nothing to do in it. You could add to your car collection any car you drive by stealing or just as part of the story. Gets added to a car collection that you can then access. And also, there are a bunch of collectibles across the world. If you want to collect them, you can do that in the free ride mode. And as far as I could tell, that was it. But then when I was doing my kind of research on the game while preparing for this, it turns out that there are actually a bunch of like hidden secret fucking side missions in that mode that are not on the map. You just have to drive to the right place or something and they start. So I didn't do any of them because I had no idea they were even there. That's quite bad signposting, if you ask me. Apparently in the...
What this makes me think is that maybe they didn't steal as much from GTA 3 as we think. Because they would definitely have not have it set up in that exact way if they were completely cribbing off GTA 3's sheet. Like, that's a very strange decision that they've made retrospectively.
I believe, in fact, a bunch of those missions were actually added in essentially a patch later on. So it seems even more they were like scrambling to add GTA-style stuff after GTA came out. See what I mean?
I can't even remember how patches worked in 2002. Like, it's not like a lot of people had internet access to their consoles and stuff.
There were some, I believe. But, on consoles, yes. But I think the console versions maybe came later. But the PC, you could have downloaded a patch on the internet. Oh, no, maybe this is... Actually, now that I look about this, there was actually a bunch of added stuff to Definitive Edition that added stuff to free ride mode, like taxi missions and more racing or something. I will say that is not clear in the game. There is no There are no like icons on the map telling you to go places. There's just nothing, and there's no reason to suggest that there would be anything if you went anywhere. I drove around a bit, and I was like, okay, well, this is it. At any rate, it's certainly a game that very much diminishes the side content over the main content. And I have actually played a little, since I got them all in a bundle, I've played a little bit of Mafia 2 now. And as far as I can see, that does do more what we now would consider more like open world content. And I believe Mafia 3 has whole bits where you're like trying to take over territory and stuff, and which is a bit more like a Ubisoft and open world. So they move away from that in future. Though I believe that the most recent one that just came out this year, Mafia: The Old Country, I believe that actually goes back to the original system, as an attempt to make a bit of a cheaper game. It's like they actually sold it for cheaper than most AAA games. So yeah, it's an interesting angle. I find it is very weird playing a game that looks so modern and then plays so kind of old-fashionedly at least in kind of structure. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It's worth playing. You can pick it up for cheap, I'd say. The story is no great shakes, but the characters are fun, and it's worth going for. Of course, we are also here to talk about the politics of this game. And unfortunately, there's not a huge amount here either. It is set in the 1930s. It's set like right at the beginning of the Great Depression. And
Back when women were not people.
And when women were not people. And there were two women in the city
and neither of them were people.
I'm really hoping there aren't any women I've forgotten in this game. I think there's, I'm pretty sure there are.
Worse for you.
I know, that would be terrible, wouldn't it? How dare I erase women in this?
I'll Google it immediately.
I was about to Google it as well. How many women?
There's like your love interest. She's called Sarah, and then there's that floozy woman who I mentioned. She's actually in one mission, and I think that's basically it for all named
just so you
women
know, I think
in
we're
the game.
using the word floozy mostly ironically.
No, it's a 1930s.
I'm
using it in the sense that the game would use it, of course.
Right.
I have nothing but respect for
grossly offensive
1930s fictional sex workers. And whatever.
My mother was a 1930s fictional sex worker.
Yes, so true.
Nothing but love for them.
My grandmother could have been, I guess. She definitely wasn't.
She couldn't have been fictional.
That's true. Good point. It's a good point. I rescind
That's quite an important aspect.
I rescind that. Yeah, it's the Depression, and there is a bunch of stuff like around the Depression in it. The mere fact they talk. Your main guy, he's Tommy. He starts off as a cab driver, again, allowing him to do one of the two things in the game, driving or shooting. And he kind of talks about how he's not getting many fares because people don't have money. There is like undercurrent of this issue. Something that is quite interesting is that, as I mentioned, in the missions, you will sometimes have to drive to a different location, and sometimes there'll be guys in your car and they're chatting, but sometimes you just listen to a news broadcast on the radio, and a number of those are like addresses from FDR. I'm fairly sure he's not the original. I think they got an actor for it, but they're like obviously talk.
Was he busy?
Yeah. Well, I guess they could get archive footage of it or something. I don't know. And he's talking about the Depression and the efforts to try and end it. At one point, there's like a car chase you're in, and you get directed to drive through a Hooverville, which was the name of basically Hooverville. Yeah, it's basically these shanty towns that were built up from people who are basically now homeless because of the Depression. Named after Herbert Hoover, who's the president.
Simpsons-ass sounding name. It's ridiculous.
Well, Herbert Hoover was the president before FDR.
These are real things.
These
are
still a Simpsons-ass sounding place.
Well, I thought you'd not seen The Simpsons. I thought you'd not seen The Simpsons. How would you know?
No,
Sofie?
I understand the tonality of Simpsons. Tell me it's not a Simpsons-ass sounding name. As two people who have seen The Simpsons.
I mean, it is, I guess.
If I could do a Marge impression, I'd say like Hooverville, but I can't.
Don't risk your voice on that. Don't risk your voice.
Can you do an AI?
Yeah,
Hooverville.
Yeah. So there's some stuff about that in there. There's something that's quite noticeable, which is there are a bunch of very noticeable posters like for joining trade unions across the game. And I kept waiting for this to become
good advice.
For this to become relevant. Anytime I was like, oh, is there going to be a mission where you like bust up a union or something? And at one point you see like your rival mob boss beating up a union guy, and that's it. That's 100% of the union stuff in the game. And I was disappointed. I was looking forward to there being some union stuff in this and I could talk about it, and then they just never followed it up. Apparently there's a bunch of union stuff in the new Mafia game. I might play that when I get 4 games in. We'll find out. But there is very little union talk in this game, which was, despite some hints, I was disappointed. That's obviously what we look for here on the Red Barrels podcast. But yeah,
Which side are you on, you know?
Exactly.
Side of the union.
Good union stuff in the 1930s. It's the Depression. It's a key time for it.
Presumably it might be quite bad union stuff though, because of like the especially American thing that the unions are like secretly run by the mafia or whatever.
That's probably. I mean, there's certainly some amount of organized crime has been involved in the mafia in the past in America. There is kind of a vague.
So I wonder if that's possibly why it's included in this game, because the Americans would expect that.
That's what I expected. I expected there to be a whole scene.
I mean, it's not an American game, is it? To be fair,
I should say yes. This game is actually Czech. The original developers of the original version they had a different name, but then they became 2K Czech. But then that got shut down. But the current developers are called Hangar 13, and they are also Czech, and they kind of got folded into this as well. So there is a lineage from the originals to the current developer.
They were originally called Illusion Softworks.
That's right. I did have that written down somewhere. Yeah, so it is a Czech game. That is something you do notice. There is a certain feeling for it that they don't really understand like America, especially if you watch the footage of the original game. There's like just some things that are a bit off about it. But, overall, I enjoyed it. Not as political as I'd hoped. It's pretty straightforward. But for a game that you can a sort of open world game that you can play relatively quickly and probably get for not very expensive, I think it's kind of worth it. Yeah. So yeah.
Wait, how long did you say it was, Alex?
I think I played it for about 15 hours or something like that.
Oh, nice.
So it's not long, especially for an open world game. Where these games tend to drag on hours and hours. Yeah, it's pretty breezy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really interesting to play a game that's like this kind of modern version of an old game that updates certain elements of it, but not the overall structure. It's an interesting artifact. I say that. But yeah, I think that might be our games, and that means it might be our episode. That's it. We did it. We got through it.
Game, set, and match.
Exactly. What an analogy. As always, we would very, 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 very much like it if you told your friends, your family, people on social media, maybe call in to radio talk shows and just casually drop in chats about Red Barrels podcast.
Yeah, be a menace for radio talk shows. Just do that.
Yeah.
They're not doing anything.
Don't do it. Don't do it casually. Do it incredibly aggressively. Just like block call them. You know what? You might want to consider taking some time off work and just committing a week or two full time to just doing that. Might want to consider it. And if you don't do it, I might think a little less of you. Just putting it out there. And when you do tell people about us, you should direct them to the ways you can get in touch with us and follow us on the internet, which are on Twitter @RedBarrelsPod, on Blue Sky @RedBarrelsPodcast.bsky.social. Me personally, you can find me on Twitter @AlexDean, ALEXDUIN, and on Blue Sky at the same name, .bsky.social. Ed, how can people find you?
Well, you can find me on Blue Sky @NotALemon and on Twitter @StillNotALemon.
Wow, I like that order.
So if I did it in your preferred order.
Thank you.
What about you, Sophie? What about you, Sophie? How can people find you?
You can find me on twitch.tv/SoFreely.
I don't know. It's
yeah, Sophie had to leave, so we just got the text.
Got somebody else.
On the other
I'm
hand,
back now.
On the other hand, if Sofie ever gets too big for her boots, maybe we've got a replacement.
You just replace me. You're just like, she's just doing the impression all the time.
Yeah, just all the time.
We've asked her to stop. And she just won't.
She just won't.
We could hire. We could hire, what's her name, Julie Kavanagh, is that who plays Marge?
Yeah.
And we could just tell people you got actually really good at
It's
the
gotta
Marge
be cheap.
impression.
It's got to be cheap.
I practiced. This is character development. This isn't, omission.
Well,
That's it.
on that
bombshell.
incredible. Don't know. We're not going to do the bombshell. Don't try and preempt me. On
you
those
dare,
incredible revelations, we are going to be done, and we are going to be saying, "That's right."
We're going to be saying thank you to Brilliant
Drink for the music.
for the incredible music.
Goes without saying.
Thank you for the music.
I would say
for
it
the
goes
songs
without
we're
saying,
singing.
but it doesn't. It doesn't go without
Thanks
saying.
for all
We should.
the joy
We
that
say it
brings.
every time, and when
Who
I
could live
don't
without
say
it?
it, that means I fucked up. That means I fucked up. Because I do mean it. I do love the music, and thank you every time to Brilliant Drink. We really appreciate it. But
In all honesty.
having done that, I will be saying goodbye.
Bye. Let's freaking go.
That's true. And hello. Well, you were making noise. I'm going to do it again. It's going to be bad for the edit. We're going to see it.
Go.
And
I
we'll
didn't
go,
realise
oh,
you were
shit, is
literally
it? And
starting.
you told me to start. You said, Alex, get started. And I did.
Go.
What do you want from me?
I was pumping myself up. I was getting hyped.
Well, hype
I've got
yourself
such a good
down.
observation for the start of this podcast. I'm so excited to drop it in there.
Oh,
Hold on.
wow. Oh, yeah.
So,
All right. And hello and welcome to the Red Barrels Podcast, episode 33.